Hey everyone, I hope this is working. It looks like my mic is. Um, Let me know in the chat that you can hear me. Sorry about that. You know, sometimes things just need a restart. I'm. I never said I was in the military. Good to know. Um, Sweet. All right, folks. Well, welcome again to More Than You Asked For. A little bit of JavaScript, whole lot of talking with me, Kyle Shevlin. Tonight, I'm really excited. We're going to keep going with our React 101 progress. We're going to pick up where we left off last week, and we're just going to keep learning more about React, starting from the very ground up and working our way up, building piece by piece by piece. If you give me a few seconds, I need to set up a few windows so that I can, see your beautiful chats and just be able to interact with you guys as we do this. So, yeah. Alrighty, getting set up here. Cool. All right. Awesome. So I'm gonna remove all this. It is true. It kind of sucked that I couldn't get started tonight, but we'll make do. We'll figure things out. We'll fix it up. So to kind of recap where we were last week. Last week we were walking through the very fundamentals of making components in React. We learned that React.createElement is really the foundation of building up our markup in React. And we walked all the way through like how that maps to JSX. And so we now know that JSX is just syntactic sugar around function calls. And then we worked from there to start making our own components. We started with stateless functional components, and we saw that essentially they are just a function that returns some markup, and they're pure functions. They take props, and we get the same output out every time. And we advanced a little bit with that, and I think we eventually got up to doing some class components using the ES6 class API, and we started to build our first stateful components. And last week I was able to show, I'm wondering if this isn't working. I'm not seeing any Twitch chat or any viewers. I want to double check something real quick. Yeah. I mean, it looks like it's all right. So if ooh, okay. So, if I don't have any viewers, I don't have any viewers. I'm a little sad and lonely, but it's not the end of the day. I am going to double check it. I'm going to pop on Twitch real quick. In fact, let's give you the whole Twitch on Twitch on Twitch. It'd be funny if everyone left me in the first 5 minutes when I had a problem. Wouldn't be surprised. All right, yeah. Well, it's telling me the truth. At least that's that. Tweet really quick. All right. Well, let's get into it. We're gonna save our component. See. Oh, might help if we actually got to the project itself. Did I put it in here? Doesn't seem so. Maybe I put it in my work folder. That'd be. Oh, you know what I did? I think Yeah, I might have put it in streams or streaming. Where on earth did I have my project? Isn't that funny? Well, just to educate all of you guys, because I can do that myself, I've decided to make what I'm teaching y'all a repo, and you can get it right here at github.com/kyleshevlin/react-101. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to clone it and get back to work, since I can't seem to remember where it is. Silly me. But no big deal. We will put it in my side projects folder. Just double checked I didn't add it there. Okay, we'll go into React projects, and we're gonna clone this thing. It'll just take a minute for me to run the commands I need to get it started. But oh shoot, definitely did that wrong. Good thing it didn't do it. Okay, React 101, yarn install. Yes, I'm using yarn still. NPM 5 is really cool. I'm really excited about MPX. My buddy Brian Holt has a project on GitHub called SFO that's pretty cool. That would be worth checking out at some point. That uses MPX. MPX basically allows you to run node scripts or node modules from your command line without needing to be in a node project right now. It fetches the current version, brings it locally, runs it, and just basically allows you to always have an updated version of the package to run your command on. So if your command is something that you're not going to run often, maybe you only have to set up a project like create React app, then it makes sense to have something like this where it will get the most updated version, run the script you need to start, and then you don't really have to worry about it again. So check it out, Brian Holt, SFO. This is pretty cool. It's basically a build process in a command and allows you to get any JavaScript project kind of up and going. So that's pretty cool. Looks like we've installed our packages. So I'm going to make another terminal window, and I'm going to start the project. Looks like it's starting, and I'll get the code up for you. And I'm going to do a quick little space switch, because that's how I like to work. And then the project should be compiled and running. And oh yeah, and I have it really zoomed in. We'll unzoom a bit now. And so yeah, we got our stuff set up and working, and that's great. Okay, so as I said, we walked last week through the basics of components. React.createElement is a function. We learned that JSX is syntactic sugar on those functions. And then we worked on stateless functional components, and we started working on stateful components. What I ended up showing you last week was I built like a simple little counter that we were able to pass different functions into a handler and change whether we were incrementing, decrementing, or resetting the counter that we were running. And all this is in the repo. You can go to this address, and if you look through the commits, I actually kind of want to show this to you because it's kind of how I want to structure it. What you could do is like you can see in the diff, I've left a comment about like what we were learning and literally like the code that we did to do it. And if we just walk through the history, like we could jump ahead to right here. Let's do this one, or a stateful component using React's ES6. And mostly you'll want to stick over here. Some of the deletions are important, but you know, like here's a pretty exhaustive comment for you that should help you like understand what we were accomplishing and what we were doing. So cool. But if we look down this component, you can see I have an increment, a decrement, and a reset, and we just set state for those. and then we call those methods inside of the onClick handler in button, and that's how that works. And then I did kind of want to start showing this. We didn't quite get to this. We got to this part where I have these little reusable functions we could pass around the app, and how we can just pass them to setState itself. In fact, that would be really kind of neat to talk about for a second. So let's code that, and that way you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to make a new component here. And yeah, we'll just call it functional state updaters. And we'll import React and component from React, and we'll build a class. I'm going to call it FSU because I'm being really short. And we'll render like a div with a button with an onClick, and we won't call anything inside of it yet. We'll just give it a no op. And we'll say click me, and we'll close the button, and we need to export it, and we'll add some stuff here in a second, but let's I want to show you a couple things here. First off, I wanted to start getting into today about a Babble plugin called Transform Class Properties that makes certain things a whole lot easier. If you remember last week, when we make a method on a component in the class API, you have to bind it to this instance of the component. Otherwise, methods won't work. So, for example, like if I want to say this.handleClick, I'm going to have something handle the click event. And I go ahead and I make the handleClick method. That method will receive the event. We can be explicit here. We'll call it the event. I'm not going to do anything with it. So in this case, we'll prevent default. There's no default for a button click, by the way. So this is redundant, but this is just to show you where the event is and what's going on. But we might want to, we'll just do console log click. Hey guys, I'm not sure my chat box is working. Can one of you guys just say hi or something? I have it in my lower screen here, and it's just blank at me, and so I don't want to be rude if you guys are saying and gals are saying things. Hey, yeah, that works. Thank you, DK Barnes. Appreciate it. Thank you. I just wasn't sure. We had a false start tonight. My broadcast software wasn't working quite right, and yeah, I'm not sure why it wasn't working. I had to restart the computer. But thanks for joining me now. K-Rocket and Royal JS, I really appreciate it, guys. And gals, I really need to work on that. I'm so sorry. And also, if you're wondering, you might have seen it on Twitter. My wife and I got back from Denver, and we brought head colds with us. So it's been a few days. I'm like at 90%. But I probably don't sound perfect, and I apologize about that. You don't get to hear my nice, smooth voice all night. Hopefully it's not too bad for y'all. But getting back to this, we have to bind this, right? This isn't going to actually do anything. It's not going to handle it properly. In fact, we could just, we'll save it. We will import it in the app. I'm going to just comment out this line. We'll import it. Yeah, Colorado was fun. I'll repeat myself because I don't know. It might have came in the first video that I now will just get rid of. But so I went out there to visit my good friend Mike because he's getting married next month. When he sent me the invite, I was like, hey, that's awesome. I'm not coming. Uh, because it was a wedding in Denver in November, and you never know. Like it just can snow like randomly there, and you might get trapped, and that would have been tough. Plus, if you ever had a friend get married, you never get to spend time with them on their wedding day. It's just not how it works. So I really wanted to spend time with him. I hadn't seen him for a few years, and so my wife and I went out with him, and we met his fiance, and she's wonderful. And yeah, it was a really good time until I got sick on the last day. I was just out of it. It was really bad. I do not recommend descending in a plane with a head cold. I thought my head was going to explode. Okay, so we're going to add our functional state updater component just to see that it's not working. See if this works. Yeah, it's definitely cool. Like that could have been really, really bad. Why aren't you working? Unable to resolve the path to the module. Because functional. Did I spell something wrong? Updaters. That would make sense. I'm also going to try and be more aware this week that I took my face off the screen for the last like 45 minutes of the stream, and also like trying to be aware of where code might connect with the view in the broadcast. I'm trying to get better about that. So we're learning as we go. Expected this to be used by class method handle click. Unexpected console statement. Those are just linting crap. They should pass, I think. Okay, so let's pull up the console and just verify things are broken. And maybe it's because I have to call click in there, this in there to do something. So let's set some state. Let's do it the old-fashioned way, and I think that's why we need to bind it. So, and this dot state equals foo clicked is clicked to false, and then and maybe our handle will say this dot set state is clicked to true, and it shouldn't work, and we'll be able to evaluate that. If it does work, then something's been wrong the entire time I've been using React. So because we got the linting errors, it's not going to auto reload for us. Okay, so yeah, this is not correct. This is undefined. And so as I was saying, like last week, we talked about how the way to fix this is to do this kind of binding, right? We set up our methods and we bind it to this instance. We fix that. We come back and we should be able to click it, and we can go to our like React, our dev tools in React. We can get down to this and we see it's true. I set it to false. I click it again. It's made true. So that's one way to do it, but it can get really tedious if your component has lots of methods. So another way to handle this is to use the Babble plugin. I'll pull up my package.json so you can see it. Hopefully my font is big enough this week for y'all to really see. That's what I'm going for. But this plugin right here, this one is a wonderful lifesaver. Transform class properties. Yeah, DK Barnes, let me get to that in a little bit. We're going to cover that. So great question. I will cover it, and I think I'll get there in about 5 minutes. So getting back to this plugin's really nice. You can go look it up on Babble.js yourself, but what it allows us to do is to not have to do this binding that we see on line 11, and it gives us like a terser syntax to actually create the things bound to this component we want to. In fact, we could set state without needing the constructor, so that's really great. So let's rewrite this really quick. I don't need the constructor anymore, and I can actually just do this. You can define it this.state this way. We'll get rid of lines 8 and 9. And then handle click is bound to this instance if we do it as an arrow function. So we've changed it so state is just a property on this class that the way the transform works, it'll do like what we had before, but we just define state equals an object. That's very clean. We don't have to do anything with constructor and super anymore. That's awesome. You might even say it's super. And then in order to bind a method to this instance, we just change it to equaling a function, right? Rather than like it being the method itself, we take the property name and we assign it to a function, and the transform will do all the transpiling we need to do it. And so we can come back here and you could see that I promise you it worked. Is clicked is true, right? That's what happened when we clicked it. Click it, it's true. This is just really nice syntactic sugar, and we'll use this more often as we move ahead. And so the reason I brought this up was functional state updaters. Those of you who are paying attention, if you look at line 11, one way to update state in a React component is to give it an object. And the way this works is this object is merged with the current state object. It's essentially the same as doing object.assign an empty object and then like current state, and in this case it would be is clicked is true, or we could just say my partial state I'm updating, right? So it's a merge of objects, and what's interesting about the object signature of the setState method is that they're batched. This often confuses people who are getting used to using setState. SetState is actually asynchronous. It's not synchronous. I can't do something like this setState is true and then check if this dot state is clicked, do this. Do is a bad word. And then when I'm done with that, I can't do this dot set state is clicked maybe isn't a great example, but is clicked to false. This won't work. The way that React works underneath the hood is that it's actually going to take set state calls that are in the same portion of the event loop that are object signature. That's what I'm going to call this, the object signature. And it's going to merge them together, and it's going to do it with that, like basically with object.assign. So as you saw, essentially what this ends up doing is it would probably be more like this. I'm not certain. We could probably test it out. But what it's going to do is it's going to batch these into in a group and essentially change it to this dot set state. And it probably looks like this under the hood. And it'll take the first one is clicked. Actually it needs this dot state first, right? This dot state. Oops, need that second one. Oop. And then it would take our first one is clicked, true. And then it would take our last one is clicked, false. And what you'd end up with is an object that is clicked false, right? And so all this would happen, this wouldn't fire, and you might not get what you expect. Imagine if you did this with like an incrementer, and it fired so fast it fired 3 increments, right? But it batched them together because your set state was an object instead of what I'm going to show you. Sorry, DK Barnes, another 5 minutes. I'm sorry. I just want to be thorough. That's what React 101 is all about. It's like being really thorough about the basics of React so that when you start building stuff, you're not caught off guard, or maybe it's just a way for you to really get to know the kind of the fundamentals so that you just feel rock solid about it, right? Okay. So we have these objects, and we know that they could be problematic. Doesn't mean you can't use it. You just have to understand what's going on, right? If you know that it's async, you know that they're going to get batched together and merged into one object, then you won't get caught off guard when you have a bug because you have something like this, where the same property is getting set multiple times. And you also know that you won't write your methods in such a way that you will try and set it in one place, do some functionality, and then set it again. Okay, that doesn't work. Now, if you did want to make that work, there's a couple ways to do it. The first way to do it is with both signatures. I'm going to teach you about this, but with the object signature and what I'm going to call the function signature, there is a callback. That callback takes, I believe, it gives you the next state. I always say don't memorize what you can easily look up. I'm going to look it up real quick with dash. I'll even bring it into the screen for you. But setState has a callback, and that the first argument. Oh, that's the next thing we're going to get at. What is the callback called with? setState or a setState callback, setState update. Either which, I think the callback maybe doesn't. Okay, the callback doesn't. I don't think gets any arguments, but you could do something like this. Where you set up a callback, and then now you could do stuff with this .state and know that it's been updated. So that's one way to handle the asynchronicity, is with a callback. Another way is if you were paying attention, and I called it the function signature, and this is what I want to get at, but it says down here, the first argument is an updater function with this signature, and it takes, this is what it looks like. We're going to give it the previous state, the current props, and we're going to return a state change object. So you could see here, they're using an updater function. Previous state and props, and they're returning an object. Just like we were setting an object, we're going to return an object instead. And we're going to make that object part of the next state. What's great about using these functional updaters is that instead of getting batched and merged, they get thrown into a queue and executed in order. Because they're executed in order, you can guarantee that each of the ones you call will update state in the order you expected to do so. So you have that benefit. But you also end up with the benefit of just being able to pass functions with that signature into it. So let's make this a counter again really quick. I know counters are so boring. They happen all over the place, but this .state.value, we're going to show that, right? And we'll make this increment, and we'll make this decrement, and we'll make this reset. Okay, and we will change these in a second. But what we're going to do is we're going to create anonymous functions, and we're going to pass the function that we're going to put into the set state here. Okay. Yeah, I get an atomic way to access local state. Maybe. I don't think that's how I would think about it, but that might be a good way to think about it. I would think about it as a more secure way of accessing state and updating it. It's not the only way. There's nothing insecure about using the object. You just have to be careful. Like, I use the object all the time, but I know it's one of the few little like black box magic things. It's not really a black box. It's right in the docs, but I've seen it burn a lot of people and have to like make little comments under PRs and stuff to be like, hey, this is why that's not working. Because it's non-obvious. It's non-obvious that this is updating state in a different way. But these functional ways will give us two things. Like, it gives us that cue to make sure it happens in the sequence we expect. But it also means that we might have opportunities to dry up code by passing around functions with a particular signature. And actually, I'm gonna try some. Yeah. So let's do that. We kind of saw that last week, but we're gonna make these functions with those signatures. It was previous state and props. And we don't actually need props with this one, for instance. We will simply return, in fact, since we're doing an object, we can implicitly return it. Those of you who are learning arrow functions, you can implicitly return an object if you wrap it in parentheses, a multi-line object. Otherwise, it'll see it as a block and expect you to have a return in it. But we'll return this object, and in this case, it'll be value prev state plus 1. That's our increment, right? Let's copy paste this really fast and make a small adjustment for decrement, which is prev state minus 1. And then I actually want to show reset the way I do in the repo. If you look at the commits, but we'll use props and set it to the prop. Props.value. And I'll adjust the component here in a second to actually handle that. So I think we can do this .props.value. We can do default props equal value of 0 in case we don't pass something in. And then here we can do increment, and we're passing that increment, decrement, and reset. And then here, instead of an event, what are we getting? We're getting a function, and we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to just call the function. Okay, and then in our app, let's make multiple copies of this so that we, one, see that state is not shared among components, but we can do value equals, we'll do 10, and we'll do value equals 20, just to show that if I did it right, they should start with different starting values, and value is missing a props validation. Not happy with me about that. 1 second, import prop types from prop types. Go to the fsu dot. Okay. I kind of want to actually split this onto its own line, and let's actually, I'm going to show you something real quick. You can, if you didn't know, you can just pass an object into the style attribute, and we'll put margin. Now you have to do it JavaScript style, but we'll do 2 ems, hopefully to separate them out a bit. And there we go. And then, okay, I didn't quite get something right. We called the function. Okay, let's walk through this. All right, so our function has the signature that we were expecting, right? Like if we look at this, it's prev state and props, and we're returning value. Oh, that's because this is an object and it should be value. That's it. That's the mistake we made. But what we'll see is, like, we have now this functional signature we can use with setState, and we can see that it's working properly. And what's great is, like, if I hit reset, it knows to go to the props value, right? It kind of makes our these counters just slightly more interesting and useful. So this is what I meant by functional state updaters, because essentially what you can actually end up doing is, and maybe we'll get into this next week. I feel like I could use a little more time to prepare, but not only can you make functions like this and then you can export them and use them around your app, but you could do something if you had like a compose, or you were using low-fp or Ramda, you could make a new function like increment by 5 or something that was actually like a composition of increment and multiply, or or something. You can make compositions of things that eventually would be complicated yet easy to understand state updaters. And so that's kind of what I wanted to show you. So I hope this function signature is both something maybe new, maybe not something you've done a lot with, but that it looks interesting enough to you that you might find it a more useful way to go about setting state in your components. There was a really great article that came out on this. I think functional set state might be good enough to, yeah. So I heard this guy speak at React Rally. Justice, he's a great guy, lots of fun. Please, if you're interested in this stuff, go check out this article. See, yeah, he did. He talks all about set state at React Rally, and it's pretty good talk about it. So if you're interested in that, go check this article out. All right. DK Barnes, I told you I'd get to it. We're gonna get to it now. I'm not actually gonna save all that. That really wasn't the next thing I had planned to do, but I'm doing this off the cuff, so I think it's okay that we don't follow the script because there is no script. So all right, so I'm kind of getting the app back into the state. Bye code. Getting back to the state that I had it at master. I know I could have done that a little easier. And I have all these comments here, and you know what? I'm just going to blow this away. And we're going to make a component that handles events now. We haven't actually handled the event itself. And that's what DK Barnes was asking about. So I'm going to tell you what I know about the event system in React, and really what I think you should take this as is I've used events a lot, but this is all that I've really needed to know to get everything done that I've needed to do. And to be clear, like, one of the most event-intensive React applications I built was for my previous company, where I had to build an application that was, it went on a 65-inch 4K touchscreen, right? And 4 users could use it simultaneously. It was actually 2 Electron apps that were running 3 React apps that were all communicating to each other via WebSockets. They were literally sending action creators from one app to the other to update the other's Redux store, because there was some state management that needed to happen across apps. And this involved basically allowing 4 people to touch and do things all at the same time. And that obviously is a lot of event handlers, like taps and touches and moves and stuff. So what I'm about to teach you is just basically everything I've ever needed to know about events. And yeah, it was a really interesting problem to solve. If you are ever on a cruise in the Mediterranean or on Holland American Express lines, and you come across an app that tells you all about the ports you're about to attend, that was your boy. That was me. So, yeah, Chris, try thinking that one up, man. We should talk about that one sometime. We'll share beers, and I'll tell you what that app was about. All right. Speaking of beers, I love my beer. Oh man, wrong pipe. Oh, that's funny. Okay, I love my beer. Gotta always have one while I'm coding, right? Not at work. I'm not that kind of guy. Okay. So let's get into event handling, and I showed briefly last week where the event actually happens, like where it's passed to in these components. So we're gonna make another React component you're probably going to get bored of me typing this again and again. I actually need to update my snippets that do this. When React pulled prop types out, they messed up my snippets, and I've been too lazy to fix it. Yes, let's do it. Let's do the beers, Chris. I'm not coming to Detroit in the winter, though. I'm just gonna tell you, man. Like, oh, that sounds horrible. You're a much hardier person than I am. Ever since I moved to the West Coast and I've gotten to deal with these mild winters, it's made me such a softie. I'm just being real. Just being real. All right. We're gonna set up a new component. This component, if you maybe saw or caught before what it's called mouse movement. We're gonna make a component that tracks the mouse around the screen and updates to us almost instantaneously where the mouse is. Cheers, virtual beers to you, Royal. Your name went red there. I don't understand Twitch chat. I don't know what all the colors mean or anything. All right, let's make our mouse movement component. By now, y'all know I'm going to extend the component. We're going to use the transform class property stuff, so you'll see me doing less of the specific like methods. Instead, I'll do more of this equals and arrow function stuff. But what we want to just basically track is an X, we'll set it to null, and a Y. These will be the coordinates of our... Oh, nice, Royal. See, I'm learning things every day. Every day. I learn from y'all. Actually, that is probably my biggest motivation in life, is just learning. I love learning. I think anyone who takes on this career should have at least some passion for learning, because let's face it, it's so tough. There's so much crap to learn. There's so much going on. Like, you can either like hide like a hermit crab and just maybe learn your one thing. Maybe you go learn your COBOL and you somehow make a 20, 30-year career out of doing it. Or you can take the challenge, try and learn something new, do something without fear. I think fear holds us a lot back. So I'm always working on being a little more courageous, a little less fearful, and I hope I can help y'all feel that way too. All right, so we got our state. Let's work on what the Napcats. What's up? Let's work on the component itself real quick. We're gonna have a wrapping div. Ooh, not a DVI. I don't know what DVI is. Let's give it some more of that style. And in fact, I'm going to show you, because this is an object, right? We can do wrap styles maybe. And what I really wanted is just a padding of like 30. We can do 30 pixels. That'll be good. And we can just pass an object in here. We will definitely cover CSS and JS in the future. I'm really excited about some of the things you can do with it. I've met some of the people who make the library, like the various libraries, like Max Stoiber and Kent C. Dodds and Kai Hohenberger, and they're all great people, and it's all cool stuff. So we will definitely cover that, because componentized runtime CSS is kind of cool. I know some of y'all are like really heavy HTML, CSS people, and I think you'll find something pretty cool about building components this way. So, yeah. Anyways, we got our div. What I'd really like to show is, oh, there's some other styles I need. We're going to do width of 100 VWs, and we'll do a height of 100 VHs, because we want it to take up the whole screen so it captures all our mouse movements. And that's the style, and we're going to do OnMouseMove. If you're wondering where I'm getting the names for these, I think I'm just going to Google it, but React Event listeners, maybe? I looked it up the other day. It's a pretty exhaustive list. That's handling events. Maybe this is a good place to start. Sorry, y'all, that is not really what I want. I want the actual list of events. All React events. Synthetic event. Maybe that'll work. Or was that where I did? No, here we go. Okay, so it's got events for all sorts of things. Thank you, DK Barnes. That's perfect. Specifically, like we can look at the mouse events, and these are all the mouse events available to us. And so you could see right here on the left OnMouseMove, and you could see kind of what properties you're going to get back from that event itself. And we're actually going to use client X and client Y. So on MouseMove, we're going to need a handler. We'll call it this HandleMouseMove. You could see I'm really creative with my method names. Actually, this is on purpose, right? Like, I really believe in clean code, and I believe in naming things as simply but as descriptively as possible. I don't care if a function ends up being like 20 characters long, as long as it's absolutely clear what it does and it can't be mistaken. So we'll handle OnMouseMove, and then we're going to say the mouse is at an x of, oh, hey, let's destructure the x and y off our state. X, y equals this dot state. And we will just do a JSX expression like we learn about last week. And y of y, excuse me. Okay, that's the markup of our component. And then we can do, oh, I'm guessing y'all are starting to lose the screen. Like I said, trying to be aware of where my face is. So I'm gonna get rid of the sidebar for now, and hopefully this is a bit better. Let's make the handle mouse move real quick. Okay. Remember, we're gonna set this equal to an arrow function, and we're getting past an event. I often abbreviate that to E. You don't have to. It might even be better not to. Looks good to you? Good. I'm actually thinking about buying like a nicer monitor. This one's actually, the monitor is lower res than my laptop. So if I get a higher res monitor, that might change the game. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna return, we're not gonna return anything. This is actually a void, but we are gonna set state in here. So we're getting the event, this dot set state, and we'll stick with the object pattern because we're not actually we're not going to do a second set state. I told you it's safe if you know what you're doing, and we're not going to do a callback, and we could set it right there. Fonts are easy to read. Good. I love this font. The one I'm using is Hack. Let me find that. Hack font. I've been using this one, I think, for like 2 years, maybe a little longer. I love the zeros, especially with the little, I can't think of words, with the little dot in the center to help you know it's a zero. It's just, I don't know, something about it. I might give Fira code a try here now that Sublime Text is ready to handle ligatures, but you know, I'm just not sure I need them. I can read triple equals just fine, and the arrows don't need to be combined. It just might be nice, but I've been using this font for 2 years, and I really love it. Okay, I digress. All right, let's set up our event. If you remember, we can get client X, right? That was over there on that page. Oops, it should be a comma. We could get our client Y. Oh, client Y. All right, and then, oh, I gotta do this. Export default mouse movement. So, okay, we have a component now. We've passed a few styles into it. Those styles should help it take up the whole screen with some padding just to move the text in a little bit. And then every time we fire a MouseMove event, this .setState will get called, and as fast as it can, it'll update it, and you know, it's so fast. Like with just the mouse, like it's not bad with one event. I think you would really need to the overwhelm it with the amount of things it would need. Oh, we don't need prop types. I'm sorry, I'm just gonna get rid of it. We don't have any props. I don't like my linter yelling at me. It makes me feel ashamed. So, all right. So you could see, look how fast that's going. I don't know if your screens are refreshing as quickly as mine because of the Twitch stream and all that, but basically, it's instantaneous how fast that's updating, right? And so this is kind of how events can be handled. We get the event as the first value in the callback of the handler. Like another way to think about that is this is redundant. This isn't how I would actually do this, but you could do this, right? And there are times where this has been like the function signature I need because maybe I need to add other things to the updater. Chris, have a good night, man. Hope you catch the last hour or so when it's recorded, when it's streamed, when it's online. I mean, can y'all hear that? I don't know if you can hear that, but my cats are like trying to get in the room. They're like, no, it's part of our territory. Anyways, this might be useful to you to like use an anonymous function to be able to pass more arguments into it later. Like if for some reason you had a second function you need to call or something else. So this is one thing to know about, right? Is to be able to know where the event is. It's the first value passed to the callback. All right, I'm going to get rid of that real quick. But that is good info to know, right? I hope so. I think it is. And that one's unnecessary. Okay, so this is just one event. Obviously, there's tons of events you can do. Keyboard stuff. You can get really pretty fancy with handling events. There's other things you can get out of it. One thing to know about React and what kind of makes it nice is that it has something called this synthetic event. In fact, if we go back to the docs really quick, like that's what this page was about, right? It's called synthetic event. And synthetic events basically allow React to handle, no, Tyler, they are not automatically debounced or throttled. You need to do that yourself. It's a really good question, by the way. And in fact, that is something I've done a lot of. Like, you might do something like, I'm sorry I interrupted myself, but you might import like throttle from lodash.throttle. Or you can use the Babble plugin that'll automatically tree shake Lodash down to just the packages you need. But let's say you get throttle and you have this. What you'd actually do is you do like throttle. That was a weird spelling of this. And you might pass in like 150 milliseconds or so. I'm not sure the function signature, but that's what would end up getting bound is your throttled function, right? So that's a way to do that. Hope that helps. Hope that gives you the answer you were looking for. But what React does with an event is it makes it cross-browser compatible, right? Your event handlers will be passed instances of synthetic event, a cross-browser wrapper around the browser's native event. So this is essentially like why you don't need things like jQuery in React, because React is doing some nice things for you. Now, this can be really confusing if you go to a library like Preact or Inferno, because purposely they don't do synthetic events. At least Preact doesn't. Don't quote me on Inferno. but that's how they're able to make their library so small. Like React 16, I believe, gzipped is like 32 kilobytes. Um, 15 was 45 or so. But a good portion of that was prop types, which they separated out for that reason, and also the synthetic event handler. But it does act as a really nice layer for you to not have to worry so much about, is this going to get handled in this browser and that browser. And so there is something to know about this. You are capable of actually getting at the real event. It might even mention somewhere in here how to do that, maybe near the bottom. I'm not sure. But I have never actually needed it. Like, I think on the event object, there's actually, it might even say, yeah, one of these might say native event. Yeah, I think that's the one it's getting at. There might be a reason for you to get the original event, and so the synthetic event hands it to you in case you do need it. You might be doing some really interesting stuff then if you're doing that. I've never needed to do it. But that is something to know. And yeah, that's essentially all you really need to know about events. There are other ways to handle events. You can handle events in a more yeah, okay, cool. Royal kind of backing me up there. I've never tried it. I haven't needed it. I don't know why you would. I'm not saying you won't. You don't have a good reason to. I can't think of a reason off the top of my head. I just not something I know enough in depth to really give you a great answer on. And one thing I really prefer not to do is I prefer not to try and answer questions I don't actually know. I prefer to go look it up or tell you to go look it up. In fact, if one of you goes finds a good example of why you might need the original event, send it to me on Twitter. My Twitter is the same handle as my Twitch stream, Kyle Shevlin. I'd love to check it out, maybe as a gist or something like that. That would be great. So all this talk about events kind of makes me think about some other things that we might occasionally need, or at least I've needed in my work. And some of that has to do with having a ref, like actually manipulating things on the DOM. So here's one of the things that kind of gets tough to wrap your head around with React until you do it a while. But there's a difference between the virtual DOM that you're creating with your React application and the actual DOM rendered. Right, there is a mapping. There's a reason that you make this and then you get that, but it's not one-to-one always, especially in React 16, now that we have things like the ability to return arrays, meaning we don't need wrapping divs anymore. And so you might make a component like, I'm just going to save this. You've seen my aux component, right? This is what we call a self-eradicating component. It's like we use it in markup by literally like writing aux, just like you would any other component, but all it does is it returns its children. It doesn't have a wrapping div. It eradicates its own self. And when you look at the app, I was using it before. Am I using it in the? Oh, I haven't got into it yet. So, but a way to use it would be like aux. In fact, we'll just do this. Aux div. We'll self-close it. We'll return a bunch, and we'll self-close it again. And I'm going to get rid of mouse movement for now. And it'll just be a blank page, but we'll look at the markup so you get what I'm talking about. Aux is, oh, silly Kyle. Okay. So we need to look at the elements on the page first. You could see we just have our 4 divs, but you definitely saw here, hey, wait a minute, I have this component. Well, that's what this component does. It eradicates its markup. It makes it nice for us maybe to group things together the way we want, without getting that extra wrapping div. And it avoids us needing to do stuff like, the reason you make this is so you don't have to actually have a, I'm just going to come down here, so you don't have to have a function that like my array, which is a function, but we're actually going to return like an array of components. So in this case, we'd return div, div, div. In fact, I kind of want to, let's take that and we'll put it in the app file. I want to try it. This is one of those, I was actually just told this. I haven't given it a shot myself, but we should be able to put my array. And this should also work. We've returned an array. It doesn't like, oh, because we need commas, just like a real array. Okay. So yeah, we should see, well, they should have an individual key prop, sure, but you see these extra divs, like this would be an ugly way to do that. And so we have these components that are able to like eradicate themselves. And this is just a great example of how the virtual DOM doesn't match the real DOM. But sometimes we really need to get at something in the DOM, right? So the way we do that in React is we have this thing called a ref callback. And what it's going to do is essentially when the component is in the DOM, it's going to fire a callback where we're allowed to set the reference node to a value in our component. So let's go check that out. That would be a great next thing to build. Our mouse movement component's great. Our aux component's great. I'm going to make a new component. We will call it my first ref component. Yeah, we'll just call it my first ref. And we're going to make this again. I told you, you'd get sick of it. But you know, this is React 101, people. This is how you learn. You just have to start from the beginning and you work your way through. And you know, normally it's a little easier to just like work with what you know and go as far as you can. But I really like the idea of this stream being foundational. So I hope you're liking it too. My first ref extends component, and what we're going to do is we're just going to render a div, and we're going to give it a ref, and that ref will be a callback function, right? So we'll set it to 1. The callback function has the signature of getting the reference to the node. So a lot of times you'll see it in code just abbreviated to R as that reference to the node. And then you'll set it to a property on this component. So this .node it might be a frequent one. If I have multiple refs, which I've had before in a component, like let's say a parent needs to know the size and shape of a child and stuff like that to do calculations, so I might have this .parent node or this .parent ref. So a lot of times I'll do something like this. This .node ref equals R. This was a bit confusing to me at first, right? Like I didn't fully understand what was going on. I want it to be clear. Like maybe I even need to be really, oh, actually, I think, no, that's correct. We're setting reference, right? This .node ref to the reference. I hope that's really explicit. And then what we can do is on like another way to do events would be like on component did mount, we can actually attach event listeners that are doing stuff with this ref, right? In this case, maybe what I want to do is we will do, I'm making this up as I go, but node ref. First off, let's just log out this .node ref. Let's do that, right? Oop, that was very clever of it. and very mistaken of me. Watch it fix it. Nice. Prettier for the win, folks. Prettier for the win. And so let's import it in here and add it to our app. And yeah, there we go. And so we should hopefully see in the console, we saw a div there. I did. And so we get the div that we're referencing. If we give it a class name, I think it might give us a little, oh, nope, that belonged there. Well, let's show the power of prettier. It should clean up that dumpster fire of code there. Yep, sure did. We might get a little bit more information, and when we see that we're getting a reference to the node. In fact, if we were to give it, one thing I had to do a lot of was like check size of things. So like let's not make it self-enclosing. Let's put in some text. Like I'm just going to write some names I see in the string in the chat. Okay, and we'll close that off. And what we're going to see is, we should see a div on the page this time with some text in it. I'm hoping. Oh, what did I mess up? I messed up. Oh, I didn't close the div. Silly me. We close the div. Our linter's mad at us, so it won't. Okay. What we can do now that we have this node ref is we can go a little further. Like, right, we can do like get the bounding box, for instance. Bbox equals this dot node ref dot get bounding client rect. I should call it rect. I'm trying to remember if that is a function or not. I think it is. I'm just going to look. Yep, it's a function, and it returns an object, and we will log the rect, and we should be able to see the size of that box. And there we go. We can see the coordinates of it, how big and how tall it is. Using refs is a way for us to actually get at the DOM element itself. And you know, maybe some of the things you need to do requires setting event handlers that way. Maybe, I don't know why, but maybe you'd have to do like, I'm going to give this a try. We'll see if it works. We're going to add an event listener, add event listener. We'll call it click, and this dot handle click. I'll add it, and then we'll have a handle click, and all we're going to do is, this is a strange way to do it. What I'm trying to prove is just a point. We should be able to see the console log of click when I do it. And then every time you have to add an event listener like this, which I've had to with like custom event libraries and stuff like that, just so you know, you do want to remove it, and component will unmount. So this .node ref .remove event listener. And this might be useful for certain libraries like D3, or I'm just trying to think of anything. Can you hear my cats back there? They're making a lot of noise. So we'll let the page reload. And if this works the way I expected, unexpected this. Yeah, so you know, we can get traditional event listeners into React by combining getting the DOM node with refs, and getting in adding and removing event listeners, just like you would in normal JavaScript. I think that's kind of a big deal, and I think that's really useful knowledge to know, especially if you need to match it with third-party libraries that aren't really meant to work with React. For example, I remember doing some GSAP stuff and needing to do stuff like this, where my whole application was React, but GSAP was handling like animations for me and stuff like that. So um, yeah, I think it's good knowledge to know. Unexpected console. Oh, well, this should work just fine. Oh, I see why it's saying, because this should have been like this. See if I get that error to go away. We could deal with the unexpected console statement. Yeah, nice. Cool. We good? Was that cool? Do you guys have any questions about that and want me to go a little further with it? Or if not, we can move on to some more, some other things that we can learn about components in React. I just want to get some feedback from y'all before we go. I'm going to take a moment, sip my beer. I do want to thank all of you for hanging out with me. This has been a lot of fun so far. I'm really excited. What I'm thinking about doing when we're kind of done walking through the basics of React and Redux is I'm thinking about, like, we'll make maybe an app together or something like that, something really simple. Maybe on down the road we'll actually build like a React native app too, and take all the things we've learned from React and build something mobile as well. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, which is no problem. We're going to move on to the next thing I think is kind of valuable to learn. Building an app sounds fun, Napcats? Cool. Good. Awesome. Yeah, and I'll make like a repo for it so y'all can follow along, or build your own or something like that. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, so we learned how to kind of manipulate the DOM of our, components now, and we've learned how to do set state changes. That's a good idea. I do have recordings of all these. I should definitely start uploading to YouTube. If you actually go check out YouTube now, should I do that myself? So you might find my music there. Actually, I used to do quite a bit of music. I don't do it anymore. Not as much. Oh yeah, look at that. You can definitely see a few songs of mine. Nothing big. Go listen to this one if that's the first one you're gonna go listen to. Brand New Dress. That's the one everyone loves. Yeah, Twitch purges videos after 2 weeks, so you're totally right. I should get this up there. I will do that. I'll probably do that after the stream tonight. Actually, I'll get started. But yeah, you can actually find my album on Spotify too. So Kyle Shevlin, that's all it is. You can tweet at me about whether you like it or love it, or hate it. I guess I don't really want you to tweet at me if you hate it. Just keep that to yourself. I'm just kidding. Whatever. Anyways, but you're totally right, Napcats. I'll get those up on YouTube. Okay. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the next thing that you kind of need to know, if it hasn't been obvious, is like how we can handle passing state from component to child, right? And maybe how we can even update a parent state from a child, right? This is kind of some of the rudimentary stuff that you need to know with React, and it's actually one of the reasons why things like Flux, Redux, and MobX exist, is because this can get unwieldy, but it'll be good to know. So tonight we're going to work on passing props. Yeah, props is definitely a part of it. And what I kind of want to show is we can actually pass our handlers down as functions to a child. components and call our event handlers, like our state updaters, I should say, from the child, so long as they originated in the place that they're going to update state. Does that make sense? So we're going to close this, and we'll make some components here. And I'm just going to name them bad names, but not bad names, like poorly descriptive names. But first child, and I just want to get some deeply nested children going on. Might help if I close that, and then we will do, we'll just do second child. This is bad, but we'll make it work. It'll be okay. And then hi. Okay, I might even do this all in one file, so it's easy to see. So, oh, they're not defined. That's totally true. Okay, we'll do this all in this file. So we'll need the component helper. I don't actually recommend writing it. You can make these as separate files. That's not the important thing to see here. Doing it all in one file is just a fast way for me to handle some of this. And we will render a div. All these will just do the same for right now, and then I'll update each one. First child, second child. Okay, so I now have 3 components. They're deeply nested. See if this will work. Okay, I think it worked. I think the linter just got mad at me. No, it didn't. Oh, because we're not passing props.children. Silly Kyle. That's right. If you want to basically, if you've used like Ember and some other frameworks, a yield was typically the word you used. In this case, our yield is the same as writing this.props.children in a JSX expression. So let's update all of these real quick with that. That was silly of me. That's a rookie mistake. Don't do that on your live stream. All right. So this should work. Come on. Oh, because the linting error is not going to go unless I do it. Okay, hi from second child, great. So we see a couple nested divs, awesome. In fact, let's get fancy. Let's add some class names. I recognize that, okay, I'll do that so you can, I don't want my beautiful face to be covering up what you're seeing. But okay, so, all right, if only the linter would shut up. Maybe I'll do that next week. I'll just disable it. Parent, first child, second child, great. Okay, now what we want to see is, my cat is being a fool. What we want to see is, if we have state in the parent, we might say something like, let's do a Boolean, something simple. We'll do is visible, true. Okay, and we will have a function that can toggle visibility. And this will, when it's fired, we're going to set state of is visible to the opposite. So we'll just do is visible is .state. You tracking with me? So, and then we will actually handle it here as well. So I'm going to do it with classes. Oh, how about this? Children. I'm going to change this. Children are visible. Children are visible. Okay. And then this can stay parent, but what we'll do is we'll do, you know what, I'm gonna, yeah, we'll do this dot children state children are visible, and this dot props dot children. Otherwise, it'll self-close. And this will need to be on multiple lines. Okay, so we have a parent class that has a state of children are visible, true. We have a function toggle visibility that will change that state. And right now, we are going to make the children visible whether it's true or not. Let's also add a button on this one to toggle visibility, because if and then we'll make a button and a child to do it too. So this dot toggle visibility, toggle, and yeah, that should be good. There we go. So we should see a button, and just so it's already working, okay, we see that it's working from the parent, but I want to make something down here that has a button that on click we'll call this dot props dot toggle visibility, right? So we're going to have to pass it down through the components to make this work. Okay, so I should see a second button. It should be right below the first toggle. I don't need let on line 4. No, oh, Napcats. Yeah, good question. You probably missed it earlier, but it's cool. We'll back up a second. That is not a variable declaration. That is using the Babble Plugin transform class properties you see here on line 32. And what it's doing is it's actually transforming those equal objects and stuff like that into the proper, like this dot state equals this. It's a way for us not to need to write the constructor if we don't actually need to use props in it. And we also don't have to bind our component methods to this with that tedious, like this dot handle click equals this dot handle click dot bind this, right? We don't need to do any of that if we follow the plugin's way of working, which is why here we just set state equal to this, equal to the object, which it becomes this dot state equals that object. And toggle visibility equals this function, which is the same as this dot toggle visibility equals this function dot bind this. Does that catch you up? I hope so. Cool. All right. And then what we'll end up seeing is, yeah, got it, cool. I think my structure might be a bit off. And in fact, what we're going to do is, rather than do it down here, I'm just going to call parent so that you can actually see me pass these all down. But we'll do, instead of this dot prop set children, we'll do first child, and we'll need to pass all toggle visibility down. So we're passing at one level here. I can't, there we go. Okay, so we've got our parent, which is going to render a first child, and we're passing down this method, we're passing it down as a property. And then first child will, instead of doing this, we'll call second child. And in order to get it down here where we have this dot props, we're going to have to pass it one more time. So yes, we will get to that. I don't think we'll get to the magic way today, but I just kind of want to show, like, while it's a pain in the butt, it is totally possible to build a complex app using just setState and, like, at the app level, so long as you're very diligent and studious about passing things down properly. And we'll pass it down one more time. And I need to close that one. Okay, so now I'm sorry it's not as clear as it was before, but our parent is getting called here. Inside of our parent, we're making a toggle visibility method that is bound to the parent, but we can pass, this is actually one of my favorite things about React, is that I could pass functions around. I could just pass JavaScript functions around. You don't understand. I don't work in React for my day job. I find it incredibly much more challenging to reason about how to pass, like, actions and other things around between a component and nested templates and all this stuff. Whereas with React, it's just as easy as passing either a function or a property around. So while it might not be the prettiest thing, right? But what we're going to see is here in the parent, we have a button that'll call this method. And this method will just toggle the visibility. Great. And then we're going to pass that same method as a prop to our child. Now, to get it all the way down to our second child, we're going to just pass it one more time. So we are setting a new prop on second child, this one, and we're continuing to pass the prop sent to us. So there is a bit of a pain in the ass in that for each of these, we'd have to update prop types again and again and again. But we get to the bottom here, and we've now passed the method, basically that function. We passed it down, and it's just stayed the function. So when I click this button in second child, right, like, even though it's nested a few layers deep, it'll go up, and it'll toggle the state here in the parent. So let's test that out. Let's make sure I'm not a fool. Okay. Oh, might want to put some, let's put, I don't know, let's just, I'm just putting some stuff here. This dot props at children, it doesn't have any children anymore. We'll just do second child. Just to give us some visual indication of where we are. I could probably do it with CSS better than I can do with some text, but Napcats. My day job uses Ember. I used to write some Ember a couple years ago. I thought it was probably the best thing out at the time. React was really new, and I'll be honest. I worked really hard at understanding Ember, and it just never felt like I really knew it. And I think if you go to my blog, kyleshevlin.com, I kind of have a recent article about this, but no, well, the backend I think uses Ruby. I think most of it's on Rails. I don't actually write any back-end code these days. So I did write Rails for about 3 years. But getting back to what I was saying, if we go, I'll go to my own blog very quick. I hope this isn't too self-promoty. I did promote the Twitch stream. Share the blog article if you want. But if you check out this article, not all just JavaScript is the same. Here's the link. Like, if you go check that out, like, it kind of explains metaphorically to me what the difference between like Ember and React is, and a lot of it comes down to API size and like just how much you have to memorize. Like the Ember API is gigantic. They've solved so many problems that I don't even think they needed to solve. And instead of letting developers use the language to solve problems, and I think that's a design choice. I think they probably did that to for what seemed like developer experience, like improved developer experience by helping people who maybe weren't as savvy with JavaScript be able to get up and running by hand-holding you so much. But it does mean when you kind of hit those edges and those walls that you want to kind of get around the system, or in this case, like just pass functions around. It says no, it doesn't really want you to do that. It doesn't really let you, it doesn't give you freedom. React has such a tiny API that honestly, I'll be able to cover the API, like most of React 101 in like 4 or 5 streams. And from there, like you just use JavaScript, right? Every problem you solve in React, like just think, how do I solve this with the basic JavaScript I know? And I do mean basic. You probably don't need to get all crazy about it, but you can. It's the freedom you're given. So those are some of my thoughts on that issue. But okay, so we've clicked the toggle on the parent. That's working. And then toggle from the child. Look at that. It works. We're able to update state in the parent several layers up by passing that callback, well, not that event handler down through the layers. And this could go as deep as you wanted. It would be a horrible, horrible experience if you had to pass it down like 20 layers of components, but it's totally possible. You can make pretty complex apps without needing any kind of global state or anything like that. And yeah, I think that's about what I'm probably going to cover today about how we can pass this down. What I'm going to get into next week, and the reason I'm saving it for next week is context, is because it does require a little bit more time than I have on the stream right now. So I don't want to rush through it. Context can be a bit confusing. Context is an experimental API, but it's been used by some of the most popular libraries like React Router and other ones, and it is worth knowing. I have never needed to use it in my React projects or at my former place of work where I worked on React day in and day out. But it's definitely a useful tool to have in your arsenal. And so I want to give it the proper time it needs. And so I think next week we'll get started by working through the context API and how what we could do is on a parent element we can basically set some values into a context that gets passed in behind the scenes to anything nested underneath it. And it's not passed in explicitly. You actually have to opt into it. But it doesn't, it has some quirks. It doesn't quite update the same way that these update, right? Like if I pass props or state down anywhere in the child, anytime those change, all the children re-render. And eventually we might get into how to optimize to not have children re-render if they don't have to, using the lifecycle method should component did mount. But I think context will be a great place to start next week. I think next week we're also going to finally get into the idea of container and presentational components. I think this is like the biggest, one of the biggest patterns that you should wrap your head around when you're building React applications. In fact, today I kind of tweeted, I subtweeted that topic. I'm going to pull it up if you don't mind. because I kind of want to take a little bit of time to talk about that itself. Um, oh, I don't need my settings. I need my profile. There we go. So where is it? This 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 tweet that's kind of blowing up a little bit. I said it is a mistake to think that the primary purpose of a component is reusability. The primary purpose of a component is encapsulation. And to me, what that means is like, I think most people have the mistaken idea that the reason you build a component is so you can reuse it all over the place. That is one great benefit of writing a component. But really, like in React, you need to open your mind to the idea that a component is much more than just a reusable piece of code. It's also an isolated piece of code. I kind of look at it as a way of like, it's another means of separating concerns. And I didn't want to use that word. Separation of concerns is such a bad baggage these days because it seems to only mean like HTML, CSS, JS, because we had a decade roughly of that's how things were separated. And now you start working in something like React and you're using things like CSS and JS, and you start to realize like really a separation of concerns means all the things in the same file, right? Less context switching, more context associated directly with what we're working with. My cat is once again trying to get in. But I didn't like that. Encapsulation is the idea of like isolating a concern or a abstraction from other concerns and abstractions. And the container presentational component is a great example. So what we're going to find out, and I'll walk you through next week, is that a container component is a component designed only to do data fetching and then maybe some data massaging. It doesn't have any responsibility for like extensive markup or how to render things. It's really a pass-through of sorts. When it mounts, it's gonna maybe Ajax call for some data, and we're gonna create some data structures, and we're gonna pass them just as we did as props to the components below us. And as we'll get into Redux, we'll see like this is where we can connect to the app state and pull in state and pull in action creators and all these things to then pass down as we need to. But that's a component that we're not going to reuse a lot. Like if I make one for one, like a lot of apps are built with like a container component per page maybe, or per section, right? So like if I don't have that repeated, that doesn't mean this component isn't useful because it's not reused. Its usefulness is that we've separated and encapsulated an abstraction and a concern, right? So I think the primary thing to think about when you're making a component is, actually I probably put it really well right here. To explain more clearly, our first concern isn't reusability, but utility. Is it useful to us to isolate and separate a concern? If we identify it's useful to encapsulate that concern, it might also be useful to make that encapsulation reusable as well, right? So I think that'll be a great topic to really get into next week. Is how we can really look at components in a different way. In fact, my personal philosophy is the MVC philosophy, like of app building, kind of somewhat deteriorates in React. And in fact, you really end up with, I call it just a C, because that C is for component, but you really end up with like just a VC, and you realize like you don't care so much about models. You care about, I mean, your backend should care about it, but like you just care about getting data and displaying it. And when you get new data, updating your app and displaying it, your concerns with like relationships and has many and belongs to, um, they become far smaller when you're building React applications. That doesn't mean you can't do models. There's things like Redux ORM to allow you to do that kind of stuff. And to some degree, learning to do like GraphQL schemas and that kind of thing. is kind of a model. But that's my opinion. I've been thinking about writing like a blog post about like the M is dead or something. I don't know. I don't want to write something quite so firebrandy, but maybe I will. So all right, I told you all that I was sick. I'm in recovery, so I'm gonna ask you all if do you have any questions for me to kind of wrap up this week? Send them to me in the chat real quick. I'm happy to answer questions. I love answering your questions during the stream. It's so much fun for me to like look down and see. Oh my gosh, your name came in the same color as the background. Miyocha FR. Nice. I do appreciate the fire. Bring the heat, man. Bring the heat. Or woman. I'm sorry. I'm so bad at that. I'm really trying. Um, uh, Getting back to it, I really appreciate all your questions that you send me in the chat. It helps me feel like this is worthwhile and worth doing. And I really love teaching, so I'm glad to have that opportunity. But I kind of want to get in this habit of like every week, if you have any random questions for me, or even questions that like, I dealt with this at my job, they could be soft skill questions, I don't care. I would love to kind of spend the end time of each stream getting to know my viewers a little bit and helping them out any way I can. So I'm gonna take a sip of my beer because I need some fluids in me. But ask away if you have any. If not, no big deal. Hey Jen, thank you so much. We are going to have to we should DM. You could give me tips on like what I can do better. I should also ask. I don't know if y'all noticed, but I changed what corner of the room I'm kind of in. Last few weeks, I was over here at my wife's desk, and I spent a little time rearranging my room to get back to kind of how I had it when I was making music. And so you get a little bit of a different angle. What do you think of GWT? Can you expand that abbreviation for me? I don't know what GWT is. No guitar today. Okay, I'm gonna do this as steadily as I can, but please forgive me for my. So this was where I was sitting, right? That is my wife's desk. It's a crank adjustable desk, so you can stand up, and so that was the view you were seeing. And now, if you turn with me, you can see my crazy setup. I've got a little light there, my microphone, and you can see the guitar up on the wall. And then you can see my hand-built workbench. We took all the closet doors down, and they're stored in the other bedroom in the closet. And you have extra working space when you do stuff like that. So, but yeah, I've got the guitar up there. Yeah, I'm really digging it. I'm actually going to turn this one more time. I'm so sorry, but I have this picture that my wife took at the San Diego Convention Center. Some of y'all have been to Comic-Con maybe would appreciate. But she took this picture. We got it printed on paper. It's nothing fancy. But I have just always really liked it. And so I feel really inspired to like be under kind of a creative piece of artwork. Okay. Unfortunately, Miyocha, I'm doing my best with your name. Sorry if I screw it up. I've never written any Java, so my opinion is shrug emoji. I'll give you a brief talk of like my background really quick. I do plan on sharing this story as a much bigger story as I get my podcast rolling. I'm going to start a podcast called Second Career Devs, but I'm a self-taught engineer. I'm currently a senior software engineer at Fastly, and I'm self-taught. I actually have my previous career as a pastor. I was a pastor for 4 years, and I did ministry for about 10. And while I was in seminary earning my master's in theology, I taught myself how to code using Code Academy, the free website. And I did that because as a musician, I had some websites, and they just weren't cool enough, and I wanted to know how to make them better and customize them. I was playing shows in Hollywood and stuff like that. And I wanted to be able to like update schedules and stuff. And, my music career didn't really go anywhere, which is fine. But I gained enough skills to actually end up with a much more lucrative and, frankly, fulfilling career. Um, yeah, we've talked about that, Jen. I think it might be great for the podcast because it would definitely help us talk about how motherhood is certainly a job and a lot of work, and I really kind of think that um, there's some really interesting stuff there, especially if you were to think about it anthropologically. And I could take this off the stream. I have like lots of thoughts about it. Um, so yeah, I was a pastor, and I couldn't get jobs because my personal theology had become a little too liberal. Some specific ways were like I was supportive of the LGBTQ community before it became kind of popular to do so. And some other things. In fact, I don't even call myself a Christian anymore. I mean that with no offense to anyone. And I'm happy to talk about that some other night with a lot more beer. Um, this is more than you asked for. But it just worked out that liberal churches don't have kind of the money that conservative ones do, and so I couldn't get hired. I kept trying and trying. I couldn't get hired. And my wife and I had moved from LA to here without jobs, and I got so lucky. I ran into an acquaintance who knew a developer who agreed to get coffee with me. And I said, hey, I don't know what it takes to get in this job career, but here's what I've made. And so here were all the random things I've made just from over the months. I literally wake up every morning, make a pot of coffee, and code for like 4 hours just to learn, teach myself any tutorial I could get my hands on. And eventually, like I met this guy, and um, he goes, yeah, I think you know enough to go get a job. Go get a job. And he gave me a few other things, but within 2 months, I landed my first front-end dev job at a place called Fine. I'll pull up their website. Um, I built a lot of awesome websites for them. They do mostly brand sites. Um, and yes, that's Jumbo. He's a great dog. Um, you can check them out. But this is where I honed all my front-end chops. I really got good at like custom CSS because we never used anything like Bootstrap or Foundation. I really got good at Suzy, introducing that at the time because Flexbox and CSS Grid weren't really a thing. And I loved it there. They were great people, but I outgrew it and I really fell in love with JavaScript. And they do Rails and not really a lot of JavaScript. And so, yeah. Moicha, it took me about a year to year and a half of self-teaching to get to the place where I got this job. Excuse me, I need to, yeah, about a year and a half, pretty consistent. I am someone who works really hard at whatever becomes my new passion in life. And I'm pretty good at, I call it, if you've ever learned guitar, you'll probably know this very well, but you really suck at it for like the first 6 months. You just have to put up with it till your hands get strong enough to play guitar, and then it's like not really a problem. And I think coding or anything difficult kind of has the same issue. Things that are really challenging require a level of persistence and doggedness to be willing to be stubborn and push through until you learn something. And I think that's how I kind of continue to progress as an engineer, and frankly as a person, is that while I have a high degree of like aptitude at a lot of things, I think my ability to put up with being bad at something for longer than a lot of people really helps me get better at things. I don't mean that to brag. It's just I'm very fortunate. So I hope that makes sense. Hey K Rocket, that actually sounds really cool. In fact, go ahead and find me on Twitter. I would love to talk a little bit more about your story. I'm always looking for people. I'm making a list to set up times to interview. So Kyle Shevlin on Twitter. My DMs are open, anybody, so feel free to send me a message. Oh, we are? Okay, sweet. Thank you. Let's chat about it sometime. Cool. All right. Well, I think I'll keep the it open just for a few more minutes, see what other questions y'all have. Um, like I said, I really kind of like this idea of getting to know you all through like this medium. In fact, I was telling my wife I really kind of wish to some degree that this was a bit more like a Zoom meeting, right, where y'all could like spit things at me and we could chat in real time. Um, but I'm really having a lot of fun teaching the very basics of React. And what I'm hoping is, like, if you know React, I also hope it's just like confirmation for you. I hope it gives you confidence that what you know well. Because I think that's also a really hard thing to gauge and to know in this industry. When you have superstars out there who are like on the cutting edge of things, it can be really hard to follow them on Twitter and be like, I'm not there. And I think there's some things to keep in perspective with that. Like, I think the big one to think of is the people who are on the edge, they don't actually have to waste much time on other things. Whereas us, I guess, for lack of a better word, normal, hardworking folk, right? Like, we might have to keep a lot wider range of knowledge in our mind to do our day jobs. But if your job is to only work on one open source library and be uh, um, a face for that, like, doesn't it make sense that it's okay for them to know everything about that, but maybe they can't write CSS or something? In fact, I know tons of people who have long, successful careers and never learned some of the basics of CSS, and it kind of blows my mind because that was the foundation of my job, right? My first job. And so I think learning to keep that kind of perspective can really help when you're trying to learn hard things, start new careers, as some of y'all are doing, or just even wanting to feel confident about what you know now. Um, I don't think anyone really benefits from large amounts of doubt. I think just enough doubt to tell yourself to keep learning and be humble is great. But as I said before, be courageous. Uh, don't let fear keep you from learning honestly, whatever the fuck you want in this industry. Just have the courage and the consistency, and you'll get it. So, well, I don't see any new questions coming in. Let me thank y'all so much for following the stream. I'm going to try and keep this as consistent as I can. I think Wednesday nights work pretty well. I do have a meetup that I go to in Portland on the fourth Wednesday of the month that I'm kind of an organizer of, and I do have a meetup on. So I might switch that week to Tuesdays. That's the night my wife plays D&D anyway, so it works out really great for me to kind of have some time and some quiet to handle that. But yeah, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I'm sorry I can't make it more consistent than that right now, but I'll keep working on it. Once again, thank y'all for sticking with me and getting through the technical difficulties I had earlier in the stream. I really appreciate each and every one of you. I hope I'm helping. Send me your questions and let me know, like, you know, if there's something specific I can cover sometime, let me know. I will do my best. So everyone, have a good night and sleep well, and I'll catch you later. Bye.